I'd like to move on to, I'll call it nutrition, and everything, I guess, related to that. And I'll probably start, like, you've got an interesting diet. I don't know whether you still do it, but last time I spoke, you kind of eat once a day and you have some meat and water. Is that still the case?
Pretty much.
And how much meat and how much water?
Water when I'm thirsty, don't measure it. And how much meat, I only count grams of protein. So depending on whatever meat it is, like if it's turkey or chicken, I don't need quite as much. But I want to get at least 1 gram per pound of body weight in grams of protein. Now, there is no such thing as a person who is zero carb, because I don't care what the meat is. There's still glycogen in the meat. We've been talking about glycogen in the muscle for the last 2 hours. So it doesn't go away when you're eating that. When you're eating muscle meat, there's still glycogen in there. It doesn't show up on the nutrition label. In a 16-ounce steak, there might be 1 or 2 grams of carbohydrates. There's 0.4 grams, I might get this wrong, 0.4 grams of carbohydrates in an egg, or it might be 0.6. I'm not sure. No, it's 0.4. Actually, still not sure. So what is it?
We'll check.
It's funny. I probably told her 20 times. So you eat a bunch of eggs and you got a couple grams of carbohydrates. So I don't like necessarily the term carnivore, because first of all, it's unnecessarily aggressive. And I don't think we should walk on eggshells around vegans, but I don't want to upset them unnecessarily. So they're already upset about everything. So, so just I'd rather be polite and just say, I prefer low carbohydrate nutrition. So pretty much the same, protein heavy.
And in that one meal, you'll try and get your whole day's worth of, so in your case, probably 250, 300 grams of protein in that one meal.
Sometimes it's 3 pounds of meat.
Wow.
We did it last night. Yeah, just a mountain of ground beef. Yeah. So I think it's funny how the critics, I think some of these people are just looking for attention. And that's how they grow. Like we were talking about the internet bottom feeders. They'll put some celebrity's name in the title of their video, really just so they get more views. And of course that doesn't translate to followers at some point. But how did I get on this?
Your meat sort of.
Oh yeah,
diet.
people criticize the carnivore diet, and they say, "Oh, the carnivore diet's so stupid." And then you see the nutrition program that they advocate, and because I'm talking about sports performance people, because they know about the 1 gram per pound of body weight, basically they're consuming 10, 15 grams of carbohydrates. And it's like, well, how the hell is that any different? It's called carnivore, therefore it's stupid. But if it's low carb, then it's great. Really? It's the same. So I think that's just kind of odd. And I see it every day with nutrition critics, saying, I don't know, you need carbohydrates or something like that. No, you really don't, but you can't go zero. So it's that whole conversation is just sort of crazy.
How many years have you been on the 1 meal a day meat mainly diet?
There have been some variations because I tested a couple things. In fact, I've tested sort of medium carbohydrates for 6 months periods.
And what would be medium? How did you find medium?
50 grams of carbohydrates in a day. For various reasons, testing various things. I'm sure if I ran a carbohydrate experiment now with volume training, it would be, because glycogen, right? Like, it would probably have more of an effect, but there's a meta-analysis on glycogen replenishment. And one of the authors, the lead author, was Menno Henselmans. That's another person you should interview. Awesome scientist. It was really sort of like, how many grams of carbohydrates do we need to replenish glycogen on a workout day? And I mean, it's really between 15 and 30. Like, you don't really need more than that. I mean, it goes into like 30 if you're like a larger, maybe male athlete, 15 if you're smaller, but it just, that's not much. Like, but I think it's funny because in this conversation, especially in the comments, like, if you really want to be disappointed by society, read the comments. Like, there are people who are like, oh, this is fantastic, way better than those carnivore morons would come up with. And it's like literally the same as what the carnivore people are talking about, like to the gram, the same. Because I also think, just from a realistic perspective, like, are you ever gonna like not have a sip of anything that has a gram of carbohydrate in it? We're going to dinner after this. I hope you have a glass of wine. I don't want you to think like, oh, I better drink water because John's here. I'm not going to be drinking water, just so you know. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's got to be realistic. It's got to be something that people are willing to follow. The CEO of Osteostrong, he always makes this joke, what's the best diet? And people go, it's like, he says, like, in the social environment, like, it's like he's got a joke, and people are like, I don't know, because the one you'll follow. Yeah. Because ultimately, like, how many nutrition recommendation books have there been? Thousands. How many did people follow? Very few. There's probably some best-selling books out there where nobody even followed what the guy actually did, except for maybe the author.
Well, they say, a friend of mine who's in the book business told me that, I don't know what the percentage, but most books, people they buy them and they don't even open the front cover. Like, they don't read them.
So they read the description, they buy them, they leave them on their coffee table, and then they tell their friends that come in about what they read on the description on Amazon. They never read the actual book. Yeah.
So not surprising. When do you prefer to time that one meal a day then? Do you do it based on, again, science, when your body can digest it? Do you base it on convenience when you're working? Because I suppose if you're eating that much meat and you've got a busy schedule like today, it's not easy to kind of fit that in your regular life, or maybe it is.
So it was more about convenience than anything. Just at the end of the day, I'm done working out. I'm done thinking. Like, if the blood leaves my brain and goes into my digestive tract, that's okay. Because at the end of the day, I'm not doing much anyway. So that's, I think, just from a societal and social standpoint, that's the easiest way. Also, you can go through life and never have a lunch meeting, but if you never have a dinner meeting, you're missing out on some shit. Like, you got to be available for dinner.
What do you think about, though, the digestion of it? Because I know you were. I was listening to you talk about, a couple of the things that people will find out in the next few years that leads to a lot of cancers is poor sleep and vegetables. I think that's what you said. If you can remember saying that. What like when I use this Aura to track my sleep, and I find if I do have a big heavy meal, particularly if I had like a couple of pounds of beef, that I would have a terrible sleep. So does that affect you in the same way, or do you leave enough time?
No, I get used to it.
Okay.
Like I can have, last night we made ground beef and I ate so much of it and I slept amazing. Yeah. But when I started doing that, I'd have heartburn. So you get a little used to it. And we even ate kind of late. So
what's late for you?
Well, I think we ate at like 9:00 and then went to bed at 10.
What would you normally eat then, a bit earlier?
I'd prefer dinner at it all depends on what's going on the next day. Yeah, I'd like 3 or 4 hours before going to bed. That'd be optimal. But I mean, it can't always be optimal.
And then do you you talk about dry fasting before. Do you only drink liquids when you have that meal, or so you're pretty much not drinking or eating anything all day, or you?
Pretty much. I try and almost every day for me is like a Ramadan fast. Yeah. And there's so much good data for Ramadan fasting. Like, I mean, think there's almost 2 billion people a year do it. And they improve their health situation so much during Ramadan season. Of course, this is not a part of the world where they really care about health at all. So they go back to terrible habits right afterward. But I think part of the reason they don't have worse health outcomes is because they do that, the Ramadan fasting for 20 days.
What's the benefit of reducing water intake?
So you've heard that camels can go like a month without drinking any water, right? You know what a camel's hump is made out of? Fat. Just fat. What happens is when you don't have anything to drink, not totally regardless of electrolyte balance, but somewhat impervious to electrolyte balance, you have the ability to tap metabolic water. So what happens is you stop drinking, you feel really thirsty, and then, after maybe 10 hours, but then you hit the 12th hour and all of a sudden you're not thirsty anymore and your mouth isn't dry anymore. So what happened was your body switched over to metabolic water, which is drawing water out of fat cells. That's how camels do it. And they can go months without having a sip of water. They're drawing it out of the fat cells. When you draw enough moisture out of a fat cell, it destroys the fat cell. So it's a much more permanent type of fat loss that happens during this process. And once you try dry fasting, you'll never go back. So I'm a huge fan of it. Probably going to do it forever. When I get my blood work done, my hydration's not weird or anything.